G'day friends, welcome to today's neighborhood swatch tutorial. Now, I firstly want to say thank you to Tina Burke, no relation, a beautiful illustrator on Instagram that messaged me and gave me that name. You guys know when I get stressed out and I can't figure out a name for something, I go Google French words for things, and I'm really happy to not have brought you this in my fake French today. So, thank you Tina for that suggestion, it was perfect. I love the play on Neighborhood Watch. I feel very Desperate Housewives about it. So, thank you for that. Let's get into the tutorial. I have so much I want to say today, it's unreal. So let me just explain how to do it first. It's super simple. I believe in you, I trust in you, I put all my faith in you, you will get it. And then we'll talk about all the reasons how it came to be, some of my thought process, because I think it can be interesting, and there's a few things I wanted to talk about. So, I'm using the new Dilutions Traveler's Notebook insert, same manila cardstock as the journals, so I'm obsessed. I've just started using this and I love it. So I'm using Tombow brush markers for this first one. You can just see I'm laying down really rough little splotches of color. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason to this. I've just chosen the skin tone palette that I have, and I'm just gonna swatch them out. Straight across the middle of the page. I got this from a scrapbooking idea. I've seen so many scrapbook layouts lately, and I love the bold move of just going right across the middle of the page. So I want to sprinkle those colors everywhere and swatch them out, because that's what we're doing, we're swatching. I'm going to use 2 pens today. There is a trick to using 2 pens, and not a trick to it, but I've got the Pilot Multi-Ball and I've got the Muji 0.25 gel pen. Love that, it's so fine. I love to illustrate with that and put in fine lines and details, especially wispy lashes. The Pilot Multi-Ball is great, it's a multi-surface pen. It comes in a ton of different colors too. It comes in a fine and medium. I'm going to leave links to everything I use that I can find down below, so if you want to purchase any of the things that I use, go nuts down there. But the Pilot Multi-Ball is great. It's waterproof once it's dry, so I think if you're getting into inking and illustration, definitely something you want to check out because it's super affordable, and yeah, I'm kind of into it. First thing I want to do is put my little, what are they called? Rectangles. I want to put my rectangles inside the boxes. Now the swatches that you do not have to be perfect, and you can do them any way you want, in any configuration obviously, but the general idea that I'm showing you, just know what it is and then use it in whatever application you want to. So it will work regardless if you do it across the page or down the page, or if you just do one or you do 500, it's all going to be the same thing. So you want to do the rectangles, and then you want to put the roofs on, the triangles. I feel like the trick to this is using your thicker pen and then going back in with the details with your really fine pen. Having that varied line width is what adds interest to illustrations, so I think it's a good thing to note to switch up the sizes of your pens. Now when I'm also sketching them out, I'm going over everything twice, and I'm really not paying any mind to being neat about it or being proportional. I want everything to kind of look different, but the key is going over it twice, because sometimes if you just do it once and it's a little askew, it might look like a mistake, but if you've got 2 lines there, it looks like that you were sketching it, because we rarely sketch and just have one working line. When I put the smokestacks on, I'm putting a bunch on there. They're just lines. They literally, you could put 3 on one house, 1 on another house, loop 1 around another. They're just there for fun. I put little doors in different sizes all across the houses. They're like Spanish archways, that U shape, the rainbow shape kind of a door. And filling that with little lines just to put some interest in there. And then I'm putting windows everywhere, just rectangles and squares wherever I can fit them in interesting kinds of configurations, and then crosses in the middle of the window to make them look like windows. Even then I'm adding like lots of stroked lines. When I go back over the roofs, I like to put details in there. Now I've used kind of a scallop, or maybe you could say mermaid scale kind of a pattern in these roofs. Some I've covered completely and some I've just left at the top. I do like to change up the pattern a lot in some of my other samples. You'll see a bunch of different samples today. I've got first I've got the Tombow brush marker, then I've got an alcohol marker one, I've got watercolor, I've got, I already did the acrylic paint, I also have washi tape, I have post-it notes, that's an interesting one. So really, you can get this effect with everything. My tips for it would be to keep it loose. Don't worry about staying inside the square or the swatch. I think it actually looks more effective if there are parts that are coming outside of the swatch. And keep it, really, really loose and sketchy. Use 2 different size pens and keep those lines, double them up. I think that's what really brings it into this interesting kind of an effect. And it's very, if you've ever watched 101 Dalmatians, that's something I'm going to touch on today. Well, I'm going to go into today, actually, because that was on my mind for this. And there's a very specific illustration style and art direction there that I was fascinated with. So I'll share that with you in a second. But yeah, this is just me putting a yellow brick road in because I can. And the yellow brick road is my way home. I put I think I put a sign there as well, just saying that they're Tombow brush markers, because I think a lot of people have been saying, well, I don't think, I've seen it, how do you keep track of the swatches? Now, personally, because this is my job and I use this stuff every day, I don't need to really keep track of them in a sense, because I kind of have them memorized. Like, I'm using them all the time, so I don't need to refer to them by any kind of, I just don't think I need to. I think they're kind of memorized at this point, but I totally understand if that's something you want to do, if you want to catalog them. So I'm just putting in different things here. Now, this isn't going to catalog the colors, but I could just write Tombow dual-ended brush markers skin tone set number 1 or whatever. And then in the Copic marker version, I do put little flags on there, or I put little pennant flags hanging from the bottom of the swatch, and I put the color number in there, or I put the color name in the flag. So there are ways to keep track of what color you're swatching if you want to do that. Personally, I don't find a need, because I'm just really familiar with all the colors anyway. Even the Daniel Smith, when I was swatching those out, I had a book off to the side that I was keeping track of my favorites. So it's not the end of the world. Whatever you need to do, everyone's going to be different. So as far as like swatches, this for me, I've always kind of thought that swatching was just to get a feel for the product, and to see if it's going to work for you the way you want to work with it. Because we've all got certain things we like to use, and we've all got certain ways of illustrating or ways of coloring. And just because some watercolor works for me doesn't mean it'll work for you. Like, I love granulating watercolor, and I love to get a lot of pooling in my watercolor, lots of blooms, but some people hate that. Some people just want a really flat wash of watercolor. So, if you're using a Daniel Smith watercolor, like, I don't know how to say it, Zoisite? Zoisite? Good luck to you, because I don't know how you get a flat wash with that. You could put a drop of water on there and just touch it with that, and it would still granulate. So, everything's going to work for different people in a different way. So, as far as swatching them, I'm not really looking at the colors, more just getting a feel for how they work, if that makes sense. Anyway, so I hope I've explained it enough as it is. Feel free to leave it there if you were just here for the tutorial. If you were here for some of the story, I've got that too. Basically, I was watching Family Guy. So random, right? I go through these really weird phases where I'll watch American Dad like on a loop. I'll watch Family Guy. I'll watch The Simpsons. Like all those kind of things that I would watch with my brother. But it's just so random. Like sometimes I just get so into it, and it's just such a random style of comedy and humor that I don't know. It's not like I don't indulge it. I'm in and out of that phase. Like some days I'm a 17-year-old boy, and then other days I'm me again. I don't know. But I indulge. I go and watch it, and it was funny to me. They had this little ditty about The Nightmare Before Christmas. It was like a little joke thing. And I was thinking about Tim Burton films and the kind of the art direction and just what he's like as a director, and just how they all look and how they're inspirational for a lot of people. And I was specifically thinking about The Nightmare Before Christmas, and then, because it was the one I was seeing, then I was thinking about Edward Scissorhands, because I remember saying so many times I love the idea of the pastel houses in Edward Scissorhands, because essentially that story isn't like, it's not like a little kiddies movie, and a lot of people love Tim Burton for Halloween, so I think I kind of, brought myself to a Halloween mindset, which I know doesn't ever happen outside the holidays, but bear with me. I was thinking about the pastel houses, and I was thinking how fun it would be to do a whole, you remember last year I did Whimsyween. I took a very whimsical look at Halloween, to kind of continue that, because, I don't love the gore. I don't love the demons in my journal. Like, I'm not about that. I just, all the typical Halloween stuff, like, I just don't really want it around. So, taking that whimsical essence of Halloween and looking at it that way, I found it much more palatable, as far as creating art pieces for it. I'll do Halloween outside and, whatever Halloween is, but if I'm going to sit down to enjoy myself drawing, I don't want to be drawing gross, like, scary things. So, that's how Whimsyween kind of happened. And then I thought, the pastel houses were a good idea just to sleep on until Halloween. I thought, you know what? No, I'm ready to do it now. I have the idea now. I want to try some pastel houses. I don't know how I'm going to do it. And then I remember this documentary that I watched ages ago. I'm Disney obsessed. I don't know if anyone knows that. I'm not crazy, but I do love it. And I watch a lot of the documentaries. So I'm fascinated by the story of it. I'm fascinated how it came to be, and how, the people that work there and what they're like. Those minds are so creative. Steve actually took me to the animation studios. I went to the ink and paint department, had a photo outside there. I felt so special just to be breathing the same air. I know the air has been different since it was in the 50s, but just to be in that place, it's just iconic for someone that loves to illustrate, for someone that loves all the stories, for someone that's worked for the company and believes in the brand and the message and the story. Whatever. I could go on for days, but so I watch a lot of the documentaries about it. I remember seeing one about the animation style in 101 Dalmatians. Now, Cruella de Vil is one of my all-time fave villains. So I've got a soft spot for 101 Dalmatians, even though I'm a cat man, not so much a dog lover. But yeah, I love 101 Dalmatians. I especially love the live-action one with Glenn Close as Cruella. Has anyone seen that? Love it. The fashion in that is just crazy. Anyway, so I was watching that, and then I decided to watch it again the other day because it was fascinating to me how that kind of art direction happened. I remember there was an interesting story there, and I'm going to leave a link down to the documentary below if you really want to go into it and have a look. It was funny because Walt Disney actually wasn't impressed with it. He really didn't like the finished look of the animation because it was kind of groundbreaking for, feature film animation. It was the end of an era about, Sleeping Beauty didn't do as well as everyone had expected, and so that was the last movie that they did all the traditional inking and painting on, because they had just developed the Xerox machine. So they figured, why can't we just photocopy? And this is when Xerox machines they took 3 rooms. They're not the standard Canon, home photocopy machine. This was a massive thing and such an involved process. But as involved as it was easier to take the artist's actual drawings and just Xerox them onto the cells than it was to have inkers put them on. So that revolutionized the way that they were making movies, and 101 Dalmatians, it was done like that. So it was a lot of the first time that the artists had actually seen their sketches on the big screen as opposed to a cleaned up rendition of it, because that it's different. Once you go in there and change subtle lines, the whole thing does kind of shift. So they were loving that, but unfortunately the ink and paint department closed, as it were, and just a fascinating story. But the actual art direction of that movie was done by a guy called Ken Anderson. He worked with a color stylist called Walt Peregoy, and now he was a bit of an eccentric character, and the way that he was a fine artist as well. He could just do amazing things. And he decided that, Ken Anderson decided, because all of the illustrations were being Xeroxed, and then they were being photocopied onto the cells, and then the ladies and the men in the ink and paint department were coloring them on the actual cell. Or maybe it was just ladies. I don't know, actually. I'm sure there were some men there. Either way, they did a fantastic job. So they would color them straight onto the cells. Ken Anderson thought, well, why don't we just mix that style into the entire movie so we can bring some cohesion? So he wanted to do the same with the backgrounds. He was like, let's just Xerox the backgrounds onto the cells, and we can color them that way as well. And Walt Peregoy, the color stylist, he was like, no, let me do the coloring on a different sheet of paper, and you can just lay the line art on top. And what he did was he used, kind of a style of impressionism. He just put splotches of color in the, in kind of an abstract was the impression of the shape. So he knew that there was a couch there. He would kind of paint a general shape of the couch with the color, and then leave it at that. And some he would just miss, if he was painting a tree, he would just paint a big green circle. And so it was very impressionistic, and then they would take the cell of the illustration and just lay it over the top. So it was kind of this disconnect between the coloring and the actual line art. Now, I'm fascinated with it, and it was kind of revolutionary for that. Walt Disney didn't like it, which I find incredible, because it was so groundbreaking and such a big thing for art direction. Like, it's still regarded as such a wonderfully unique style of animated feature film. So the fact that Walt didn't like it, I found fascinating, and Walt was a romantic, and he loved the romanticism of all the classic Disney features, and this was so modern for that time, the 50s and 60s, like this kind of, and this look, anyway, so that's how that kind of came to be. I was on a Tim Burton, little side thing. I wanted to try pastel houses. I was remembering this documentary. And so essentially I fused it all together and came up with this and just put it in my journals. I've been journaling about all the places I've lived in the smokestacks, like all the little clouds of smoke that come out. I just wanted to show you the original sample just then, because if you look, if you can rewind it just a second, I wondered how I came to choose that palette, and then I looked over into my my scraps. It's not scraps, it's like my ephemera that I keep at my desk, and there was this Post-it note pad that I got from Japan, and it was exactly the same color palette that I had used in my sample, because I loved the color palette, and I thought, how did I choose that? It's kind of random for me to have chosen those colors. I rarely work with green and orange, so the yellow, pink, and blue I understand, but it was just random. And then when I looked at the Post-it note pad, it was the same colors. Not the blue I kind of substituted for a light gray, but it's a blue gray, so I believe that that's the same. So if you look at my original example and sample for this, it was just the painted version of this Post-it note. So I thought it was pretty interesting. I think my point was, I wanted to share all of that with you because I think sometimes you don't give your own brain enough credit. You guys are creative people. You're all incredibly creative, and believe me, because I watch. This is my job now. I take note. I'm always on Instagram. I'm always checking out what you're doing, and I'm checking the Facebook group. I'm checking YouTube. I watch so many YouTube tutorials and just see such fantastic creative minds. And it's all in your subconscious. I think that your subconscious is just throwing all of this stuff up at you and saying, this is what you want to do today. I want to see what you do with it. And I think that that's such a crazy thing when you think about how all of these elements kind of came together. I was thinking about Tim Burton, the fact that I wanted to do some pastel houses, and I just so happened to remember this documentary that I watched about 101 Dalmatians, and then the color palette was from a Post-it note pad that I really, really loved, but subconsciously I hadn't picked up on the fact that I'd memorized the colors of it. So I think it's so fascinating to see that in your own work. So I want you to kind of think about how that's been happening to you, and what kind of things have been brought to the forefront of your mind, and you're creating with that, because your subconscious is crazy. That's why I don't like to fill my brain with lots of things that I shouldn't be thinking about, because I know it's going to come out. But yeah, I'm obsessed with the way that God created brains. I don't get it, but it's not for me to get. I think it's just incredible to think about. And I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. Let me know if you're going to get onto your neighborhood swatches. I'd love to see them all over Instagram, and make sure you tag me so I can share some love. Please remember, you can do this with anything you want. These tutorials are put out there for you to try and for you to feel encouraged and inspired. So whatever you need to do with them, please be my guest. I'm going to leave you with a shot of Oliver watching television with Steve, because I found it on my phone the other day, and I think it's just one of the most adorable things I've ever seen in my entire life. It'll give you a real insight into how Oliver truly is and how much affection he needs. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. I hope you enjoyed the tangents. I'm going to leave a bunch of links down below to products that you might want to try, and also to the documentary that I was talking about 101 Dalmatians, if you want to check that out. Otherwise, I will see you soon. Bye!